With the sheer number of 26-inch fat tire e-bikes on the market today, it's become difficult for any one model to stand out amongst the competition. One way companies are trying to gain advantage over one another is by simply putting larger batteries in their bikes. Ariel Rider and Magicycle took it a bit further, and both have released fat tire e-bikes that not only come with a large 20 amp-hour battery, but are 52 volts as well. Since the Ariel Rider Kepler and Magicycle Cruiser Pro are both 52 volt e-bikes and designed remarkably similar to one another, I thought I'd do a head-to-head comparison between the two and see just how they match up. If you'd like to see more reviews and videos from me, please hit the subscribe button and thumbs up. It would be appreciated. Now let's get into it. Most e-bikes in this affordable or economy price range will almost universally come with a 48 volt battery. There are still a few bikes out there that run on 36 volts, but for the most part, it seems most companies see 48 volts as a sweet spot for battery cost and performance. However, there are several advantages of having a battery that is 52 volts, such as the increased power, speed, and range. Power, in terms of the amount of watts a battery and controller is able to output. The more wattage you can run through your e-bike motor, the more acceleration and torque you will usually have. The maximum speed that an electric motor spins at is largely based on the amount of voltage that is powering it. So the same motor running on a 48 volt battery will inherently run just a bit slower than a motor running on a 52 volt one. Range is increased when the amount of voltage is also increased. The greater number of volts means more watt hours that you'll be able to run your e-bike motor for, even if the batteries have an equal number of amp hours. For these reasons, when it comes time to upgrade their OEM battery, many riders will choose a 52 volt one instead of a standard 48. But why do that down the line when you can get a bike that comes with a 52 volt battery already? The batteries on the Ariel Rider and Magicycle share the exact same form factors. They are both 52 volt, 20 amp hours, or 1040 watt hours in capacity. Both companies also indicate that they're powered with LG cells, which are of good quality. You should be able to get anywhere from 900 to 1000 charge cycles on both batteries on average, depending on how you care for it and use them. The Kepler and the Cruiser Pro each come with what the company calls fast chargers. However, there's a slight variation between what each company considers what a fast charger is. The Magicycle comes with a 3 amp charger included, while the Ariel Rider comes with a 2.5 amp one. These chargers are better than the typical 2 amp chargers that come with most e-bikes these days, but with the Ariel Rider, the small 0.5 amp extra will make just a small difference between the charge speeds that you'll get with it versus the standard charger. Magicycle shows that their battery will charge to full capacity within 4 to 6 hours with this 3 amp charger. Ariel Rider indicates that their 2.5 amp charger will fill its battery within 4 to 7 hours. Magicycle offers replacement batteries for the Cruiser Pro for $799, currently on sale for $699. Ariel Rider doesn't have a listing for the replacement battery for the Kepler quite yet, but I have been told that they will carry one soon, and it should sell for around $600. The Cruiser Pro and Kepler both use a rear-geared hub motor. However, the wattages that these motors will output are different. It appears that the Cruiser Pro comes with a typical 750 watt motor that peaks at 1,144 watts and has a 96 Nm torque rating, which is honestly plenty of power for most tasks you can ask an e-bike to handle. However, the Kepler shows an above average 1,000 watt motor with a peak wattage of 1,800 with 108 Nm of torque. This is a large amount of power for an e-bike in its price range, which could get you into some legal hot water if you're riding around in these power ranges. One common thing that some e-bike manufacturers do to skirt around motor power and speed regulations is to limit their e-bikes to a certain classification right out of the box, but have the ability to unlock the bike through the settings in the display, putting the bike in something like a sport mode or off-road mode. Ariel Rider lists a top speed of 32 plus miles per hour, but makes a note that this speed is only to be used where legally allowed. Right. Magicycle lists the speed for the Cruiser Pro at Class 2, 20 miles per hour, and it can be bumped up to Class 3, 28 miles per hour through the display. With the specs that the Ariel Rider lists for the Kepler, it wouldn't actually fall into any legal e-bike classification, given its listed 1,000 watt motor and 32 plus mile per hour top speed. However, to keep things legal, they ship the Kepler with the controller settings limited to 750 watts and 20 miles per hour speed. If you just so happen to unlock the bike to its full potential, that's up to you, and Ariel Rider assumes no liability by riding at these higher speeds. We're sort of in a time where you can almost buy an e-bike with a jet engine strapped to it, just as long as they say on their website it will only go 20 miles per hour. I'm not complaining, it's just funny. It's no surprise that both of these bikes list similar ranges, since the batteries are essentially the same, but with the different motor wattages, the range approximations are just a bit different. Magicycle lists an estimated range from 50 to 80 miles, while the Ariel Rider gives between 35 to 75 miles. These ranges, of course, will vary depending on the level of pedal assist you are using, how much pedal input that you give, as well as how much you depend on the throttle. Many other factors can affect your range, such as the weight you're carrying, the terrain you're riding on, the number of stops and starts, as well as several others. So keep in mind what range you actually get out of either of these bikes may be drastically different. It seems that most new e-bikes are coming out with color displays, unlike previous generations that mainly had monochrome LCD screens, so it's no surprise that these come included. Both displays have an available USB-A charging port as well, so you can plug in your phone or any other items that run off of USB. These screens will list the speed, mileage, power, battery capacity, and now show the remaining power in terms of an actual percentage as well. This seems like a negligible feature, but many e-bike displays lack detailed battery information. So you'd normally have to gauge your remaining battery power by a vague 5-bar battery icon or something similar. Having a genuine percentage is a huge improvement, as long as it remains accurate. These displays will let you set the level of pedal assist that you'll wish to ride at as well. Ariel Rider, like most other e-bikes, comes with 5 different levels of pedal assist. However, it looks like Magicycle gives you 2 extra and comes with 7 levels instead. Honestly, I guess it's nice to have, but I really wouldn't see the added 2 levels as a feature that would influence my buying decision of one bike over another. As far as color options go, you don't get a lot of color variations on either of these bikes. The Magicycle mid-step frame comes in either white or midnight blue, while the high-step frame only comes in midnight blue. The Kepler high-step, on the other hand, comes in black with either red or blue accents or gray with the black accent, while the mid-step only comes in black with blue accents or gray with pink accents. The frames of these 2 e-bike manufacturers are almost indistinguishable in both the mid-step and high-step variations.
Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture. Intel has told us there are at least 7.
Okay, I already see one. Give them. Okay.
They're the same picture.
If you just saw the silhouette of these bikes, it would be difficult to tell which bike was which. Except for the branding, there are just slight differences between the rear rack and the handlebar stems. Otherwise, they look almost exactly the same. However, both companies list different sizes than one another, which makes me somewhat doubt the accuracy of the numbers that they are providing, especially in Magicycle's case. Magicycle lists the same exact dimensions for their high-step and mid-step models, despite there being an obvious, albeit small, variation. Magicycle lists the standover height for their high-step of about 26 inches, while the Ariel Rider shows 28 inches for theirs. For the mid-step frames, Ariel Rider shows it has a 25-inch standover height, and Magicycle lists the same 26 inches that they say the high-step has. While I don't necessarily like the mid-step designs of these bikes, I would have to at least give the companies credit for trying to make a more accessible option by lowering the standover height. However, what's the point of having a high-step and a mid-step model if the standover heights are almost exactly the same? In Ariel Rider's case, a 3-inch difference, and according to Magicycle, they are exactly identical. Another thing that I wanted to point out concerning the standover height is the placement of the water bottle mounting bosses. Both the high-step and mid-step versions of the Magicycle frames have their mounting points on top of the top tube. So if you were to add a water bottle holder or another accessory such as a frame-mounted folding lock, you would greatly reduce the amount of standover height that is available. The mid-step version of the Ariel Rider has the same limitation, but their high-step frame has the bosses moved below the top tube, facing the battery. You won't have the reduced standover height, however, this limits the size of what you can mount to your frame since it may hit the top of your battery. Not a huge deal, but it's something to keep in mind. Magicycle lists the wheelbase on their high-step and mid-steps of the same 45.5 inches on each, while the Kepler has about a 46.2-inch wheelbase on their high-step and a marginally shorter wheelbase on the mid-step of 45.8. Neither of these bikes are very accessible to riders that lie within the shorter height ranges, but just looking at the frame designs, this should be fairly obvious. Magicycle shows a recommended rider height for both frame versions spanning from 5'5" to 6'5" inches for each. Ariel Rider doesn't list a recommended rider height for the Kepler, or for any of their e-bikes for that matter. The company instead tells their customers to measure their inseam and see if it will work with their bike's seat heights. So figure it out yourself, I guess. Both bikes weigh about the same. The Magicycle weighs in at 76 pounds for both of their versions, while the Ariel Rider comes in at 73 pounds for both of theirs. The weight capacities of the 2 bikes are different as well. Ariel Rider lists a weight capacity on their bike of 300 pounds, while the Magicycle shows 350 pound capacity. The included rear racks of these two bikes are of the opposite effect. Magicycle's rear rack shows a weight capacity of 55 pounds, while the Ariel Rider rack appears to be more solid and able to hold 70 pounds. Besides the difference with the rear rack, another feature that is slightly different between the two brands is the handlebar stem. The Magicycle looks to have a fixed position stem, while the Ariel Rider provides an adjustable one. So you will have the ability to raise the handlebars and adjust them to a greater degree on the Kepler than you would on the Cruiser Pro. Other than that, the handlebars themselves look very similar. The faux leather grips display screen size and position, as well as the same half-twist throttle. The gear shifters and brake levers seem to be identical as well. Ariel Rider and Magicycle both list textural hydraulic disc brakes with 180mm brake rotors, so you should have decent stopping power on both bikes. Also, the bikes come with a 7-speed Shimano drivetrain. However, it looks like the Kepler has higher gear ratios than the Cruiser Pro, so you should have the ability to pedal at higher speeds on the Ariel Rider, while you may just be ghost pedaling on the Magicycle. Each bike comes with 26-inch by 4-inch knobby fat tires. Magicycle went with the Kenda tires, while Ariel Rider went with CST. Most riders won't notice any difference between the two. Both have no rear suspension, which is mostly standard for bikes of this price category. However, they do have a suspension fork for the front wheel. Magicycle indicates that the Cruiser Pro comes with a hydraulic front fork, while the Ariel Rider comes with a Zoom branded fork with 80mm of travel. Ariel Rider doesn't list the type of suspension it is, but they told me that it's hydraulic as well. Similar front and rear lighting can be found on both bikes. A standard headlight that really doesn't provide a ton of lighting for riding in low light situations, and a tail light attached to the rear rack. The lighting looks to be basic, and as I had mentioned in previous reviews, most e-bike lighting is mainly a be seen versus having the ability to see type of feature. Both e-bikes also come with the standard plastic fenders. They should provide decent protection and have less noise than similar metal ones. Considering splash protection in an electric bicycle is important, I thought it would be worth noting that there is a difference between the location of the controllers between these two brands. The Magicycle has the controller unit mounted on the underside of the down tube behind the front wheel. It is located behind the front fender. However, in my experience, this area can get drenched while riding in wet conditions. The Ariel Rider, however, has their controller mounted in a more traditional location on the seat tube towards the rear fender, which should be better protected from water splashing from the tires. Most electronic components of an e-bike are fairly weatherproof, so there isn't a huge chance that wetness will seep into the controller's casing, causing problems, but at least for me, it's something that I think about while riding. If you do run into problems though, one major difference between the Magicycle and the Ariel Rider is the warranty. Ariel Rider provides their standard 1-year limited warranty on the Kepler. However, the Magicycle gives you double that and offers a 2-year warranty instead. New batteries, e-bike motors, and various replacement parts can get expensive, so while the warranty is often overlooked, it's definitely something to consider when purchasing an e-bike. And having an extra year of protection on your investment can be a major plus. Many of the components between these bikes are identical, and save for the added motor wattage that you get with Kepler, they are almost interchangeable. So with that being true, I would have expected the prices to align more with one another. At the time of me recording this, the Cruiser Pro High Step is priced at $20.89, and the Mid Step is selling for $21.99. Magicycle is currently running a sale for $200 off the purchase of either of these bikes, so $18.89 or $19.99 respectively, depending on which frame style you were looking to purchase. While the Ariel Rider Kepler has a uniform price of $19.99 for both. Right now, they list a $200 discount as well, so $17.99 regardless of whether you choose the high or mid step. Considering the added motor power that you get from the Ariel Rider, I would have expected it to be the more expensive option, but it's the other way around. When taking price into account, I always like to factor in any additional costs that may arise from add-ons or missing components that would increase the purchase price. But the Kepler and Cruiser Pro have most everything that a bike in this category and price range should typically come with. Overall, these e-bikes have decent stats and components. Most everything is about standard for e-bikes in their price category: brakes, derailleur, display, lighting, etc. And 20 amp hours seems to be the new standard capacity for e-bike batteries right now, and Ariel Rider and Magicycle followed suit. And the inclusion of a 52-volt system is really one thing that makes these bikes stand out amongst their competition. On a downside, I would really like to see more of an effort put into the frame design in the mid-step versions on both manufacturers. A true step-through option that doesn't require you to lift your legs so high to get on and off the bike would be welcomed. Gone are the days where step-through frames were thought to be quote-unquote girl bikes, and low standover bikes are becoming a necessity for many riders. But if you're considering a 26-inch fat tire e-bike, specifically in a high frame design, both the Magicycle and the Ariel Rider are good options. If I had to choose though, I would recommend going with the Ariel Rider, since it has a few tweaks that give it a slight edge over the Magicycle and make it a better value. The faster top speed and increased motor wattage and torque, a rear rack that looks to be more solid and able to hold more weight, also the adjustable handlebar stem, and of course, to top it all off, the Kepler comes at a lower price than the Cruiser Pro despite having these added features. It's a really tough choice though, especially since the Magicycle comes with a 2-year warranty instead of 1. Let me know which one you'd choose. To be clear, I don't get paid for saying any of this, and these are just my opinions. I also haven't received any e-bikes from either company. I do, however, appreciate you taking the time to watch this review/comparison video. If you enjoyed watching it, please leave a comment and give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more videos from me, please hit the subscribe button so YouTube will send more of my videos your way. Thanks again for watching and stay safe.